Sorry, excuse me. So for this afternoon, so first of all, good afternoon, everyone. So for this afternoon, we are going to discuss our next topic for Linguistics 1, which is phonetics. So for our objectives for this lesson, at the end of the lesson, the students should be able to discuss the properties under phonetics and transcribe words using the IPA symbol. So for this afternoon, we are going to discuss only, or we are going to finish on the first objective rather, which is to discuss the properties under phonetics. So this is just a short overview or introduction to your phonetics before we move on to IPA transcription. So last week, I have already posted the lessons that we have, which focused on morphology, which deals with the study of your word structure or dissecting your words into their simplest form. So for this afternoon, we are going to discuss the third branch of linguistics that we will be discussing under your microlinguistics, which is phonetics. So what is phonetics and why do we need to study phonetics? So in simple terms, phonetics refers to the study of speech sound. So it is concerned with how speech sounds are produced, how are speech sounds perceived by the listeners, for example, of the speaker who produces these different speech sounds, and what are their physical properties. So as humans that we are capable of making sounds that are not speech sounds or not considered as speech sounds in English, but are considered as speech sounds in other languages or in other parts of the world. So for example, we have here your na sound. So usually, when do we usually use or make this sound? Yung TSK or yung na sound natin. In what situations ba do we make your na sound?
Pag na-piece off ka, ma'am.
Pag na-piss off. Okay, that's correct. Thank you. Thank you, Leo. So for example, if you're pissed off or kung sa aton pa bad trip ka about something or someone, if you're disappointed or frustrated about something or someone. So we make that na sound as your expression to express our annoyance or being pissed off. So for us, for example, for English speakers or even in Filipino, we make this sound to express, as you have said, your annoyance or disappointment toward something or somebody. But for us, although we make this sound, we basically use this to express lang our annoyance, kumbaga. So we make that sound but not necessarily in a sense na we make this sound to converse with someone. So siguro wala pa man sang instance sa life nyo nga nag-istorya na kamo nga amo-amo lang na nga amo lang kamo sin nga duha nga nakaobra kamo sang, or you were able to hold up a conversation using only that sound. So that's true for English and Filipino speakers perhaps, or kung exclusively speaking those languages only. But there are actually other places in the world which makes use or ari siya ng click sound nga sound. It's part actually of their language. So I'll share also a video or a short clip illustrating that one or illustrating that point for a while. So visible na po ang screen ng video.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Kindly interrupt me if hindi po marinig yung sound or wala kayong marinig na sound when I play the video. Thank you.
So, Vili, there are 11 languages spoken
Yes.
within Southern Africa.
Yes.
In your Xhosa.
Putol-putol lang, ma'am.
You speak Xhosa, the wonderful
Yeah.
clicking.
The clicking.
How many clicks are there in your language?
There is 5 clicks in my language,
Sh-
Xhosa language.
Do them for me. I like that.
Nagputol-putol pa rin po until the end.
Ma'am, lag-lag talaga, ma'am.
Po, ma'am.
Po, nagalag.
Yes, ma'am.
Opo, ma'am.
Ay, sige. So, I'll play it again na lang. If ganun pa rin, I'll link it later, yung video, para makita nyo rin if ayaw nyo talaga mag-play. So I'll play it again na lang.
So, Vili, there are 11 languages spoken
Yes.
within Southern Africa.
Yes.
And you're Xhosa.
Yes.
You speak Xhosa, the wonderful.
Yeah.
Clicking.
The clicking.
How many clicks are there in your language?
There is 5 clicks in my language.
Sh-
Xhosa language.
Do them for me. I like that. What's that? Now, I've heard that there is one expression that is very difficult to say in your language. Something about a skunk. The skunk rolls in the grass and breaks his windpipe.
That is a very difficult thing to say it in Xhosa about the skunk. But in Xhosa it goes this way. Iqaqa, liqeqaqeqeqa, uqaqaqa, liqhawuke, uqoqoqo. That is.
Okay, so that was for the snippet nung of Southern Africans who were Southern African man who was speaking the Xhosa language. So for those na hindi talaga or if naglag pa rin yung video or yung audio, I will just link or include the link of the video in the recorded version of this one so that you could also view it at your own pace if if mas okay yung internet nyo later or kung ano man ang factor. So in the video, you have heard the man there speaking the Xhosa language, which is one of the languages of Southern Africans. We have there the Xhosa language, which involves yung 5 clicking sounds that they have. Aside from the words that they speak in their language, may ara sang integration of those clicking sounds. So as you have heard for those na if okay ba ang quality ng video kanina, while speaking a word, naga-insert sila sa atong mga clicking sounds. So that's why, or kumbaga it proves through this statement that we are capable of making sounds that are not speech sounds in English, but they are speech sounds in other languages. So proceeding or moving on, so the science of phonetics aims to describe the sounds of all the words' languages. So we have 3 subsets as well under your phonetics. So we have your acoustic phonetics, auditory phonetics, and articulatory phonetics. So first we have your acoustic phonetics. So this focuses or this studies the physical properties of the sounds of language. So how do people who specialize in acoustic phonetics study the physical property of sound? So that is done through the presentation or visual presentation of your sound waves. So if you have seen, for example, yung mga let's take for example ng mga behind the scenes na mga videos or yung mga documentary na ginagawa ng mga artists or singers when they are making their album. So diba there are snippets sometimes or clips where they are at a recording studio and recording a certain song. So you can see there yung mga equipment, for example, and the person at the equipment pag nag-record na is, for example, if may beat na i-play or may ikantahin yung singer na line or lyric, makita mo through sound waves. So that is how people who specialize under acoustic phonetics study sounds through your sound waves. So for example, it focuses na, for example, when we say the word heed, ano ba ang presentation niya in terms of sound waves? So diin ba nag-fluctuate? Diin ba naganubo na ang tono? I-compare mo siya when you pronounce the word head, which is shorter ang E na sound. So heed and head is somehow different dito sa E na sound because it's shorter. So makita mo ang difference nga, okay, diri kay nagsaka pa siya, diri kay nagnubo na. So it's about studying as well the amplification, yung frequency, ganyan sa sound waves. So that's for acoustic phonetics. Next, we have your auditory phonetics. So if your acoustic phonetics studies or focuses on physical properties of sounds of language through the presentation of sound waves, your auditory phonetics naman is focused on how listeners perceive the sounds of language. So for auditory phonetic, it studies the hearing process. For example, if a person maskin kapila mo nagibalik-balik nga E nga sound and then ang pag-pronounce niya is E. For example, milk na siya milk. So siya milk gid ang iya nga pag-pronounce, for example. So perhaps in auditory phonetics baka pwede siya ma-find out that perhaps there's something wrong if hindi sa physiological properties sang iya nga tongue or sang iya nga dira nga hindi maka-pronounce or maka-roll off sang amo nga sound. Perhaps there's something wrong with the hearing process of that person or may nagahinder in order for him or her to hear the word correctly on how it is pronounced. So for example, when we hear someone produce a certain sound or we are learning the sounds of a certain language, paano ba ang hearing process na? Diin ba first mag-agi? So sa pina, for example, then eardrum before siya makabalik so abot sa vestibula and other before the auditory nerve. So that is the concern naman of your auditory phonetics. So lastly, we have your articulatory phonetics. So articulatory phonetics focuses on how the vocal tract produces the sounds of language. So again, acoustic phonetics, it studies the physical properties of the sounds of language through the representation of your sound waves. Your auditory phonetics, on the other hand, it studies the hearing process on how listeners hear a certain sound or the different sounds of language. And articulatory phonetics, this focuses on the vocal tract, on how the vocal tract produces the different sounds of language. So you can see here from your nose until your vocal cords and glottis, these are the different parts of your vocal tract which are involved when you are producing the different sounds of language. For example, the sounds of English, of the English language. So for example, you see here your upper lip, your lower lip, your teeth, your alveolar ridge, your tongue, your palate, your vocal cords and glottis. So you can see also here, those in red, yung mga letters or the sounds of these letters. So kung saan yung letter, yan or letters rather, or the sounds, ito yung mga parts in your vocal tract which are involved when you are producing those certain sounds, the certain sounds of those letters. For example, the letters P, B, and M, dito sila nakalagay sa lip because when you produce the sounds of these letters, your upper lip and your lower lip are usually the ones that you use when you produce these sounds. Like your pa, your ba, and your So nagamit gid ang imo nga upper lip kag ang imo nga lower lip. Your W and your WH naman when you produce the sounds of these letters, although ara sila diri sa lip lapit, dira lang sila sa gwa because hindi gid siya necessarily nagamit ang upper kag lower lip when you produce the sounds of these letters like your wa or water or where. So wala kaayo although ginagamit mo ang upper lip kag lower lip. So the same is true for example for the other letters here like the sound of your letter H. So vocal cords and glottis because duhangin lang man ang ginagamit naton when we produce the sound of H na ha. So from your vocal cords and glottis. So although we will not focus man or hindi ko man ipamemorize sa inyo nga okay, diin ang M, N, and G. Diin ba ano ba nang ginagamit? So I am just showing you for as well you have an idea about the focus of the different subsets of phonetics like your articulatory, diin ba ang placing usually. Kumbaga. So perhaps it could help also in producing the sounds of those sounds in English. So next we have orthography. So orthography refers to the spelling system of a language or simply the spelling. So spelling does not consistently represent the sounds of language. Although in Filipino language, we have this rule in some of our sounds na kung anong bigkas, siya rin ang baybay. So that could not be exclusively true for English naman or the sounds of English because sometimes there are words in English na ganito yung pronunciation or ganito yung pag-sound out. But then, when you look at the spelling, do iba lagi ni siya. Reservoir pero ang pag-spell is V-O-I-R. So sometimes there are some exceptions to that in the sounds of the English language. For example, we have here number 1, the same sound may be represented by many letters or combination of letters. Like the sound E, for for example, it could be represented by not just by one letter. So of course, the sound E basically is represented in your with your letter E in ki, he, me, and so on and so forth. But other than the letter E, you could also make use of different combination of letters to make the E sound. Depende as well on how they are used in words accepted in the English language. Like your people. So this is a combination of your letter E and O, but the sound it makes is still E. People. Like your IE and believe. So it's still E. Your EI na combination in sees, the letter I in machine, your AE in Caesar, your EA in sees, and your OE in amoeba. Kumaga. So as you can see, the sound, isa lang ka sound, E, but then it could be represented by many letters or different combinations of letters. Second naman, the same letter may represent a variety of sound. So kanina, yung isang sound, pwede siya i-represent ng different letters. So we also have here, for the second one letter could represent or it could be produced using different sounds. So we have here your different words na nagagamit ng letter A, but then they are pronounced differently or they are produced differently sa bawat word that we have here in the examples. Like your father. So your A here, the letter A here is produced with your sound na father. Next, we have your badly. So badly, it's like a half between your A and E ang pag-pronounce mo sa letter A dire. Badly. So we also have your many. Ang A naman dito in many is produced with your na sound. So iba siya sa father, iba po siya sa badly, iba po ang many. So same with your village. So your village there, na ang sound niya is like your na sound. So iba pa rin ang sa kumbaga. So we also have your last word, which is your made. So the letter A here is produced naman, although letter A pa rin, letter A, letter A, letter A, but then it's produced differently. Made. So third, a combination of letters may represent a single sound. So as you can see here in the examples that we have, meron dito na mga letters na dalawa, but then when we read them in a word or if they are placed together, side by side in a word, we pronounce them or we produce the sound as one. So for example, in this word, you don't pronounce S and H as S. Diba? So we pronounce them as sh. So if na-join together sa isa ka word or na-place together side by side ang S and H, we pronounce it as sh. As in shoot. Hindi taman siya ginabasa nga put. No, dugin as makagid ka pronounce ang word. So same as well in other words or examples that we have here, like your CH. So your CH even, yung ganitong combination, di ba, we have two variations on how you could pronounce this word or these letters of your CH. It could be pronounced as your ch, or sounded out rather, it could be sounded out as ch. And or rather it could be pronounced or produced with the sound na k, as in character. So it's different. Pa-mute lang po ako, Ma'am Angel Love. Okay. So for example, character, so that's CH, the sound ka, that's different naman when we pronounce the word, your word na cheese. So we don't pronounce it as keys. It's cheese. So even two letters could have more than one sound na ma-produce. Same with your TH in Thomas. So soft ang pag-pronounce ng TH mo, Thomas. So it's different naman when you pronounce either. So if you listen, when you pronounce either, although may T pa siya, doga pa kadto na sa the nga sound ang pag-pronounce mo sang TH. Like your the na THE na article. Either Thomas. So there's a difference. So for example, your PH, we make the sound when we pronounce physics with your PH. Philippines, for example, phone. So same with your GH. Sometimes there are different variations of how you pronounce your GH. Like your, in this word, rough. But then, if we have this word, so GH here still has your na sound. But if we have this word below rough, how do you pronounce this word? How do you pronounce this word below rough? Do. Okay, thank you for the response. So this is pronounced as do. So you can see the difference in rough and do. Pariha lang sila nga GH or combinations of letters but pronounced differently. So we have to be careful as well. So although we don't know the reason why na, for example, you have your, for a moment. Okay. For example, you have your wallet and then nga ari siya sachet, nga hindi sachet, kumbaga. So even 'di ba your CH na sound pero dito is SH siya, sachet. Na hindi sa hindi sachet, nga hindi sakit. Kung ganun ang pag-pronounce. So we have to be careful with the different variations or the combinations ng or the sounds na ma-produce ng when we combine certain letters. So nag-iiba-iba siya. Number 4, a single letter may represent a combination of sounds. For example, in the word Xerox. So in the word Xerox, so we actually have here dalawang X but they are both pronounced they are sounded out differently. For the first X, you pronounce it with your Z na sound, which is similar to how you sound out your letter Z in Xerox. So although we spell it with an X, ang sound niya is Z. But then we have your second sound, or second X here. So in the second X, for example, Xerox, the sound of X here is the combination of the sound of K and S. Xerox. So those sounds ng letters K and S. So it represents a combination of sounds. So next, some letters in a word may not be pronounced at all. So this is one tricky thing as well in orthography or in the spelling system of English sounds. So although we spell them with these letters, they are not pronounced when it comes to pronunciation or sounding them out. Just like in your autumn, so we spell your autumn as your A-U-T-U-M-N, but the N is silent. So we don't pronounce autumn naman as your autumn. Nagalagas pa, naghahabol pa ang letter N. So same with the other words here, such as your pterodactyl, right, resign, core, not, sword, psychology, and lamb. The underlined letters here are letters here in these words are silent lang or they are not pronounced. So we have to be careful with that as well. So for example, you have here yung word nyo na medyo similar ang spelling but then the pronunciation is different. So sometimes, if magmali ka lang nga gin-silent mo or gin-pronounce mo tong letter nga dapat silent, nanggali siya, mag-iba po ang meaning or it could lead to misunderstanding. For example, we have here your core, as I have used in the example. The meaning of core is yung club or organization, as in drum corps, survey corps, ano pa dira ang mga other words which makes use of core. Yan ang meaning ng core with your silent PS. But when you mean corpse, what do we mean by corpse? Anyone?
Ma'am, bangkay, ma'am.
Bangkay. Okay, very good. Thank you for the response. So that's correct. Corpse means bangkay, cadaver, a dead body. So sometimes if you use or if you pronounce it ano lang, magmali ka lang or magsipyat ka lang dira gamay, it could change the meaning. Ang ginamin mo is core nga, ay gusto ko magsali sang core kay, kung yari drum core, gusto ko maghaboy-haboy, sang baton masaot-saot lang ko dira, mapatik-patik lang ko sang layer. But then you say na I wanna join the corps. Kumbaga. So, base kuratan ng imo nga kaistorya. Ang ginamin mo when you said I wanna join the corps, pero ang ara sa utok mo nga meaning is tong club or organization. But then, kaya ang paghambal mo, corpse, basi mambal sila nga, ay nga, buhi ka pa man, mapalubong ka na yahaw. So, that's different. Core is different from corpse. So, you have to be careful with that as well in order to avoid being misunderstood. So, lastly, we also have, there may be no letter to represent a sound that occurs in a word. For example, in the words cute and use. So, you have there the underlined letter. Yung letter U is underlined in both words. Sorry for a moment. So the sound of your underlined U is literally U. If you sound out the underlined letter U. So iba, although we were taught, di ba, na A, E, I, O, U, na your letter U is sounded out as U or A. But then we also have words, like your cute, use, union, unicorn, universal, wherein we pronounce U as gid ang sound niya. So we don't have a letter in the English alphabet nga nagastand for the sound nga U lang gid nga pagkakita mo sa letter U ang pag-pronounce niya or ang pag-sound out. So that's why we still use your letter U. But then, we are careful na lang sa pagbasa if ang sound ba is A or U or U gid nga sound. Okay, so that's it. So that would be the end for our discussion for today for phonetics. So are there any questions or clarifications? So short lang din nga discussion muna since it's an introduction lang muna to phonetics. So are there any questions, clarifications po?
None so far, ma'am. Thank you.
And so far, sige po. So if there are no questions, so I will just post tomorrow the next topic with the recorded lecture na lang, so we don't have to have our video conference tomorrow. So tomorrow would be, hopefully, if ma-post siya tomorrow, that would be the last lesson for the midterm, along with the second activity also for the midterm, which would be the last activity as well for the midterm. So if there are no questions or clarifications, can I ask you to open your cameras for a while for screenshot na lang na purposes for documentation?
Ma'am, dulom na di ma'am, kaya wala na sang salag, ma'am.
Sige, okay lang. Nag-strong gid si Leo, oy. Sige, I'll take a screenshot na po. Okay, we're done. Thank you for your cooperation and your participation for this afternoon. So, we'll end early kay do maulan naman gid no, and short lang naman yung discussion. So, no activity yet for this lesson. Thank you for your participation. God bless. Stay safe. Ingat gid. Thank you. You may leave na po.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ma'am, bye.
Ma'am, bye-bye.
Bye. Ingat.
Thank you, ma'am.